So welcome everyone to the Sacramento Public Library's Lunchtime Publisher Book Buzz series. Summer reading is well underway at the library, and we invite you to visit our website at saclibrary.org and sign up for their summer reading program. It's totally easy, and programs like this will count towards your goal along with the books that you read. This year, adult finishers will receive a coupon for one free book at the book den and a choice of tote bag or chip clip so you can haul around your books and you can keep your snacks nice and fresh. But of course, the best reward of all is the pleasure of reading a good book. And speaking of good books, if you are looking to read a few this summer, you're definitely in the right place. So just a few housekeeping details before we get started. First of all, please note that this presentation is being recorded. All participants have both their cameras and microphones turned off for this event so that we may better focus on our main presenters. The chat is open, as you already discovered, so if you have questions for our presenter or for me, that is the place to ask. If you have technical difficulties, please message me directly. All participants will be sent a link with the slides featured in today's event, and the recording of this event will be posted on the library's page. So should you miss a title or two, don't worry about it. Also, randomly selected attendees will win prize packages courtesy of our presenting publisher. Notifications will happen via email after the event. And with that, on with the show. I would like to welcome Chris Connolly and Lenny Mays, who are representatives from the publisher Harper Collins, and they will be sharing some of the best new and upcoming books you'll want to read this summer, both fiction and nonfiction. So welcome, Lenny and Chris. What do you guys have to recommend today?
Thank you so much, Brendel, for having us. Thank you, Sacramento Public Library, and of course, thank you to all of you for being here. We're really excited to talk about some summer titles, many that are on sale and available now, some that are going to be coming out later in the summer. And again, as Brendel said, I am Chris Connolly, the Library Marketing Associate at Harper Collins, joined by my colleague, Lenny Mays. And I think we'll go ahead and just get started. We do have some introductory slides. We are also known as Library Love Fest. We work with and for libraries. They are some of the most important institutions in our country, and we're happy to support them. Visit us at librarylovefest.com for information on what we do. We're on all the social channels. Once a week, usually on Tuesdays, we do Facebook Live episodes. Often it's either us presenting books similar to what we're doing now. We will have author guests. Just yesterday, we had best-selling author Wiley Cash in conversation with his editor, who he's worked with for over 10 years now, which was fantastic. And all these videos are available as replay and on YouTube after the fact if you aren't on Facebook. But all of the information can be found at that URL there on our Facebook page. And then Lenny is our podcast guru, and I'll let her introduce that a little bit.
Yeah, so we have a podcast. It's called the Library Love Fest podcast, as you can see on the screen. Anywhere you get podcasts, you can, or as I like to say, anywhere you can feed your podcast addiction. I love a good pun. So anywhere you get them, you can download this. If you don't know how to listen to a podcast, it's super easy. You go to SoundCloud and type in Library Love Fest podcast, and it comes up, soundcloud.com. We do a lot of author interviews. We do a lot of editors speaking to their authors. We talk about like different events that are coming. So if you really want a heads up on all of the nice books that you can read that are coming out, this is really an intro to that. So for librarians and patrons alike, you'll be in the know. So check out the podcast and subscribe and let us know what you think.
Okay, and with that, we'll get right to the books, starting with one of my favorite authors, Laura Littman, whose new book, Dream Girl, is going on sale this month on the 22nd. She is one of the best mystery thriller authors working today. Her previous book, Lady in the Lake, was a New York Times bestseller. She just continues to grow and grow. She's also just a fascinating voice on what it means to be a woman, a mother, a professional. She just does it all. She's a star. And this newest novel does have echoes of Stephen King's Misery and follows an aging novelist who is a complicated guy. He lives alone in Baltimore, where Laura is based. And a freak accident renders him essentially bedridden, and he relies on the help of two women to kind of get through things. And he's kind of slipping in and out of consciousness. He's on drugs. He's really questioning what's real and what's not. But what really brings these issues to a front is when he starts to receive calls from a woman claiming to be the main character in his hit novel, Dream Girl. And so this really sets things off where he begins to question again his own sanity, who this woman is, why she's calling him, and what do they have to gain by torturing him in this way. Great characterizations, great statements on pressing issues that we see today, whether it's the Me Too movement, toxic masculinity, and more. There's a lot going on in this book, but it's done through one-of-a-kind writing, great characterization, and a singular voice in Laura Littman. She's one of a kind. So this is, again, going on sale later this month, and it will, I'm sure, be on library shelves as well. And then More Me. This is a huge book for Jim Morrison fans, fans of The Door. This is the definitive book for you, the collected works of Jim Morrison. So again, this is a book that basically Jim Morrison, based on his own writings, his own diary entries, wanted to write. This is a mix of visual components, notes and excerpts and essays from his own 28 privately held notebooks, and much, much more. It's a 600-page anthology of his writing. He's a poet, he's a philosopher, he's a one-of-a-kind creative. And this is the book told through his eyes and his words and his visuals, his life. It's, again, I think, just one of a kind. It's a major publishing event that is both also going to be really, really interesting in audio. I don't know if any of you are audiobook listeners. As visual as this is, it's also such an auditory experience if you go that route. There's just some one-of-a-kind recordings that are available. There's just so much to talk. I could spend an hour talking about everything that's within these pages, but I think it's kind of, you have to experience it to understand it. And this is on sale actually as of yesterday. So definitely something to run, not walk to. So it's the collected works of Jim Morrison on sale now.
Yeah, so I want to talk about Mary Jane by Jessica Anya Blau. So this is a book you can get right now, and I encourage you to go get it because it is amazing. It came out a little earlier in May on the 11th. And so this is a lead read title for us. So that's a program that at Harper Collins, the sales force gets behind a book. They all vote and they're going to get behind a book for a season. And so we chose this one, and that means it has a lot of in-house love. Everybody that represents this book voted on it and they love it so much. So that speaks volumes, I think. But the story itself is just so heartwarming and so sweet. It's about a girl, a 14-year-old girl in 1970s Baltimore. And she is really from a straight-laced family. Like they're very, they suppress a lot of things. They do things the quote unquote right way, and don't really speak about anything too difficult. And she gets a job in the summer working for a doctor, a local doctor. She's going to be a nanny for his kid. And my bell's ringing. So probably nothing fun. I apologize. So she's going to be a nanny for a little girl that lives there for the doctor. And her parents say, "Doctor, great. So that we know you're in good hands." But what they don't know is that he is treating this kind of this rock star and his movie star and his wife, and they're going to come while he dries out. He's going to treat him. He has a lot of addictions, so he's coming there to dry out. And so she's kind of thrust into this world of like sex and rock and roll and listening to songs she never listens to. And it's such a fun coming of age story. And they really embrace her. And I think it really brings you to a lot of conversations around like what is outside of your family, and is there a right and wrong out there. It, like I said, very much like Summer That Changed Me. And it's such a cool book. Like I said, really heartfelt. And we talked to Jessica on Door to Door, and that was a fun conversation. So I hope you go check that out. But she's very charming as well. So that's Mary Jane by Jessica Anya Blau. And next is a nonfiction for you. So you might recognize Katherine Johnson on the cover here. If you read Margot Shetterly's book or saw the Oscar-winning film Hidden Figures, you'll know of Katherine Johnson. So she, at the age of 97 in 2015, she became a global celebrity because President Obama awarded her the prestigious Presidential Medal of Freedom Award. This is the nation's highest civilian honor. For her work pioneering the work as a mathematician, not a mathematician, on NASA's first flight into space. And so this book is a memoir. It goes into her life, and you know a little bit about her from the movie or the book if you've read it, but this really goes into all the things in her life that made her who she was. A personal journey. She was a child prodigy from the Allegheny Mountains in West Virginia. Then she became this human computer at NASA. And it really talks a lot about how education is just so important and the role of influential educators in her life. And then it also tells this record of a century of racial history, segregated schools, and historically Black colleges and universities that really played a part in nurturing dreams of trailblazers like Katherine. So it's got a lot going on, but it's just a story of a wonderful woman who just did so much with her life and really changed a lot of other people's lives in the process. So that's my remarkable journey, and you can get it now.
Okay, next up is Imposter Syndrome by Kathy Wang. You might know from her critically acclaimed novel Family Trust, which was her debut. This is a really fun, part spy thriller, part tech kind of investigation. It follows one woman, Julia Lerner, who is this kind of celebrity COO of a major tech company in Silicon Valley. But no one knows this, but she was actually brought in via Russian spies, and she is working for the Russian government. She was born there, trained, and then sent to America to infiltrate. And she's doing too good of a job because, again, now she's like a major American celebrity. But the demands by her Russian handler are growing and growing and growing, and she's quite taken by the lifestyle of America, and she's slowly trying to pull away from Russian influence. Little does she know that a low-level kind of tech worker at her company has noticed some weird occurrences within this, social media kind of Google, Facebook hybrid that they founded. And there's this kind of cat and mouse interplay where this low-level employee knows that someone, and increasingly she comes to learn that it's Julia, this COO, is doing something nefarious. So it's really fascinating to see this relationship, to see Julia Lerner's relationship with her Russian handler, to see Alice, who's the first-generation Chinese American, this low-level tech employee, kind of find her way through the tech industry. There's so much going on, but it's just so well written. The characters are all really engaging. And again, I just love kind of being that fly on the wall for the tech industry, which I'm just so intrigued by, but don't know much about. You really get an insider's view because Kathy does work in the tech industry. She's fascinating. I did do a podcast interview with Kathy, which you can find on our SoundCloud page. Highly recommend. Just a really page-turning book. Great summer read, on sale now.
Okay, How Lucky by Will Leach. This is a book I champion so much, and it is so uplifting and fun and just a thrilling read. It's a mystery wrapped up in just a really quirky, fun book. When we talked to Jessica Anya Blau from Mary Jane, we also talked to Will Leach, so you can see him on the same episode of Door to Door. And in this book, it's a debut novel of Will's, and it's for fans of The Curious Incident in the Dog in the Nighttime. And so we have Daniel, who lives this kind of crazy life considering everything he's been through. He has spinal muscular atrophy, and so that has put him in a wheelchair. And so then after another incident, he can't speak. And so he spends his days, he wanted to live on his own away from his mom. He spends his days living at home in Georgia in a college town by himself. His best friend comes to visit him. He has a nurse that comes to make sure everything's going okay. And his day job is speaking online via Twitter to an airline people complaining. So he kind of likes it because they can't see who he is and they don't treat him differently. And unfortunately, they treat him badly, like they do most people on Twitter. And so everything in his life, he's just kind of living the best life he's given. He's pretty positive. And all of a sudden, a girl he sees walking down his road all the time goes missing. And he's the only one who saw her. She, no one sees him. So they didn't really pay him any attention, but he saw who took her. So now he's going to be like the most unlikely person to solve this crime. And it gets him into a lot of trouble. But it's a very, very fun read with a lot of heart. And so I hope you please pick this one up. Stephen King said you're going to like this book a lot. So that's How Lucky by Will Leach.
Stephen King quote says a lot. When you get behind the book, you know it's good. All right. Next up is The Happiest Man Alive by Eddie Jaku. This is a nonfiction memoir by a really uplifting, fascinating, inspirational man. So Eddie was a teenager in Germany during the rise of Hitler's Germany. He was in a Jewish family and essentially was taken to a concentration camp, Auschwitz, and spent 7 years of his life navigating the horrors that took place there. And in the final days of the Third Reich, he was on a death march but managed to escape through force of will and hope. And, despite the harrowing, scarring losses and experience that he had, he found a way against those odds to live a life of hope and of gratitude and of happiness. And this is his story, how to live happy in the midst of such horror, with those scars that were, incurred. And I think we can all, relate, of course, to the story of survivors of World War II, but also just of, horrible circumstances. How do you come out the other side? There's a great TED Talk that Eddie gave, which if you Google Eddie Jaku TED Talk, he really puts this into his own words. And I think he's just the singular voice. He really is. It'll make you cry, but it'll be happy tears, because he does give you a path towards hope and towards redemption and towards living a full, healthy, love-filled life. So this is a really exciting, publication we're honored to have on our list. It is on sale now. So that is The Happiest Man on Earth by Eddie Jaku.
Okay, Hang the Moon by Alexandria Bellaflore. So this is the second in a series of Own Voices queer rom-coms. You don't have to read them in order, so it doesn't matter, but this is in the same world. You've seen one of the characters before, which is Brendan Lowell, sorry. And he owns this dating service company, online dating service. And so his sister, which you meet in the first book and comes into this book, she has a best friend named Annie who's booked a last minute trip to Seattle to see her. And Brendan kind of has to take over and show Annie the ropes when his sister is not in town. And so they kind of know each other. He's kind of had a crush on Annie, but they don't know each other that well, and they get to know each other. And throughout this, it comes up that Annie doesn't really believe in a lot of the tropes from like romance novels and TV and movies. And so Brendan, who loves them, he loves love, he's obsessed with it, he's going to make a plan to prove that they are real and that it can happen and that it's something to believe in. And so he sets off on these series of date ideas that don't always end up the way he thinks they're going to end up. But it's very fun. And it also has a lot to do with like finding yourself too. There's this whole story with Annie and where she's going to go later in her life. So I always appreciate when there's a little bit more depth and seeing yourself and finding yourself within that. But we're very excited that we have these Own Voices queer rom-coms because they're very important. And the one before this, Written in the Stars, those are both just really, really great ones. So two Recs in one there. So that's Hang the Moon. And then next we have An Unlikely Spy by Rebecca Starford. So this is a historical fiction about a woman named Evelyn. She has always been really ambitious and clever, and she got a scholarship to a really prestigious academy. And she lives in England, and she ends in 1939 with an Oxford degree in her hand, and this war is looming, and she doesn't really know what she's going to do. And then she becomes recruited by MI5, the counterintelligence unit. And so now there's a secret society that is seeking an alliance with Germany, and she's going to pose as a Nazi sympathizer to go in and try to build this case to expose their treachery. But she's drawn really deep into her duplicitous moment in her life where she's playing two roles, and she kind of has to make an impossible choice, which is to save her country or the people who she loves, and what that is going to look like. And so it's a really fascinating story, but it's got a little bit of deception. You have that spy angle that's really fun, and sacrifice. But what's really cool is that it's based on the history of real people within the British intelligence community. So you kind of have that layer in there as well. Yeah, and we have some really great praise for it coming in. So you can get that on sale now too. Unlike the Spy by Rebecca Starford.
Okay, this is a great one for the dog lovers amongst us. How Stella Learned to Talk by Christina Hunger. So Christina is a speech language pathologist who previously had been working with young children who were having delays in their language development. And she took the concepts that she used called augmented and alternative communication. And when she brought a puppy home, she kind of questioned, why couldn't we do the same thing? Dogs respond to specific triggers and specific words. So why wouldn't we be able to kind of reverse that and give them the means to communicate themselves? And so she set up these paw-sized buttons that are programmed with her voice with specific words and commands. And then when she kind of trained Stella to communicate using these buttons, and now has this full working speech set up between herself and her dog. I mean, you might have seen videos of other people putting this into play online. It did become a viral thing. But this is both part her own story working with Stella to develop this language system, and also kind of more of a prescriptive guide to how you can, set up your own set of communications with your dog. So really, it's an instant New York Times bestseller. It went on sale last month. Just a fascinating breakthrough in human doggo communication. So I think it's a really special publication, and we're really excited about it. And C. Sudi says, we have watched videos of dogs and a couple of cats who talk this way. Yeah, it's really fascinating stuff, right? So yeah, very excited. So that is coming. It's on sale now. Yeah. Oh, and me again. So The Hidden Palace by Helene Wecker. I don't know if any of you had read The Golem and the Genie, which was the first book in this series, which was a New York Times bestseller, just widely praised and acclaimed. It's been several years since that came out. This is the sequel to that. But do not worry, if you're a longtime fan, great, you're going to adore this special book. If not, you can dive in. I actually came to this world through this book first, and then was so amazed by it that I went back and read the first book. And this takes place in the years between kind of leading up to World War I. So, early 1900s, and takes place primarily in Manhattan, also in the Middle East. And it's a really fascinating mix of both Jewish religion iconography and Middle Eastern religious iconography. And follows the two central characters that were at the core of The Golem and the Genie as well, Hava and Ahmed. And Hava is a golem, so she's made of clay, and Ahmed is a genie, which is this being of fire who's kind of restless and quick to anger. But they were the central characters of the first book, and they are now living in 1900s Manhattan, which is so vividly rendered. And they're trying to essentially live as, undercover, live as humans. So you have this very richly detailed, these richly detailed communities, the Jewish communities, the Middle Eastern and Syrian communities. The Syrian community in particular was fascinating. It kind of used to be located where the financial district in Manhattan is now. And you're following them really as they're trying to navigate life as normal humans. And I see Steve, you're asking if we can start with Hidden Palace. Absolutely. But what happens is new characters come into play, including a new golem whose creation is a fascinating thing to read through these pages, and a new genie. A genie, yeah, she's female, and she comes over and is looking for a counterpart. And so their lives are thrown into disarray. You also meet a lot of the humans from the previous book and new humans who's, are tangentially related and whose lives are impacted by the Golem and the Genie. It's a literary novel. I think, it's not straight fantasy, though there are, of course, fantastical elements. It's a literary historical novel that is character-centered as you follow them through a very, again, vividly rendered Manhattan and other areas. It's really just haunting and immersive. And I think, again, there's so many passionate fans for these characters, this world, and this writer, and you will not be disappointed. I could go on and on. I did interview Helene, which is very much worth listening to. I think that's on our podcast. So do check it out. It is available now.
Okay, Hairpin Bridge by Taylor Adams. So remember when I did a 2-book rec in one? I'm gonna do it again because his previous book, No Exit, which came out a couple of years ago, was so amazing. It blew me away, and that's a really great one to read as well. But he just gets suspense and thriller like at the core of it. It's icy, it's chilly in every sense of the word in all of his books. So his new one, Hairpin Bridge, what I was very eager to read when we got this, and it was the same. I read a lot of thrillers and a lot of mystery, and I did not see it coming. It's got multiple twists in there that I don't know. I didn't see it coming, and I was pleasantly surprised. It's very unique. And in this, we have a story about 2 sisters. So we have Lena and Cambry. So Cambry was kind of on, not the run, but she kind of was driving throughout the US, like on her way. She kind of had separated from the family and was doing her own thing and very free spirit. And one day she drives to this remote bridge 3 months before the story begins. So she drives to Montana and she jumps 200 feet to her death. And that is the police's version. That's what Lena and her family back home get the word. They're twins. She kind of feels in her bones that she doesn't think something is off. Something in that story is off, especially because she gets a text from her sister the same night, and it really incriminates this Corporal Raymond Racedick, who's the police officer that's on the scene, and it mentions him. She's like, well, that's very weird to get this message. So she's going to go on a journey to figure out what happened. And throughout that, she comes into contact with this police officer. There's a car chase. There are multiple people coming in, trucks coming down this lone bridge, and she doesn't know who's coming and going and what side they're on. Who knows the real story? And like I said, at the end, you will never guess it. It is a very good twist. So this is definitely worth a read. It is a little, and I say this for No Exit too, it is a little gory. I feel like people need to know that because not everybody likes that. So there is some blood and gore, but it's a very fun read, and he's just such a great storyteller. So that's Hairpin Bridge by Taylor Adams. And then, one of my favorites. So this is The 100 Years of Lenny and Margot by Marianne Cronin. This is a debut novel that is just, it blew me away. It's such beautiful writing. It's cinematic, and it's been optioned to hopefully be a movie. So I could definitely tell while reading it, that'd be perfect for that. Much like really sweet stories from John Green or Jojo Moyes, it's in that vein. And it's about a 17-year-old named Lenny, and she's in the terminal ward at a Glasgow Princess Royal Hospital. So she's dying. She is coming to terms with that in her own way. And she doesn't really feel like she gets along with all of the other people her age in the hospital because, for various reasons. But she wanders upon this older group that are 80 and above, and they are doing an art class because they're in the same hospital. And she just really falls in with this crowd. She gets to know them, and she especially takes up with 83-year-old Margot. And then they decide that between them, they've lived 100 years, 17 and 83. So they embark on this mission to create a piece of art for every year of their life. And they're going to display it at the end. And so now it goes back and forth between both of their lives in different times. It's obviously Margot has a few more stories than Lenny, but it goes back and forth in time. and really pieces together this beautiful story of friendship and found family and grief and coming to terms with a life when you don't really have a lot of answers. But there's also so many funny aspects of the story. There's this chaplain that Lenny just really gets a kick out of, like, annoying with all these questions about, like, she's trying to trip him up. She's like, really, what is going to happen to me after? And so it makes for some comic relief. But like I said, so much heart in this story. It's really, you won't forget it.
Okay, The Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois by Honore Fanon Jeffers. So Honore is an award-winning poet and essayist, and this is her fiction debut, and it is an epic with a capital E. It is the story of one family, but also the story of America as a whole. And it follows primarily Ailey Pearl Garfield, who is a young woman who is the daughter of an accomplished doctor and a school teacher, and her family is, her story is, again, the story of America. They're a Black family. They're successful. They are based in the South. They have roots both in urban and the North environments, but also they are tied to the horrors of slavery and Jim Crow. And Ailey is sitting there with her family, again, a successful family, and she is looking at her father's side, which has kind of like they're related to some revered figures in Black history. And they don't fully acknowledge the horrors of Jim Crow South, what it means to live in the South and what's happened there. Whereas her mother's side, they, have this direct line to slavery and the horrors incurred there. And so she's living this kind of double life of, acknowledging, not acknowledging her family's past. And so she takes it upon herself to kind of dive into their history, to do research, to ask questions, and to really delve into a history that hadn't been fully articulated before that. And it's a really beautiful coming of age story. It's a big book because it does jump all the way back to the initial settlers, to Native American history and storytelling and spirituality. There's a lot happening here, but it is weighted by this unforgettable family and Ailey, who really just grounds it and makes it a book that you want to follow her through, because there's so many twists and turns, and it is just an important book. It's a beautiful book, and it's told with a really singular voice. She's a really talented author, and I'm really excited to share this book. It's going on sale next month, so July 27th. So something to look forward to, certainly. That's The Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois.
Okay, Nobody, Somebody, Anybody by Kelly McClory. So this is a really fun, darkly comedic novel. It's a little quirky too. It's a debut. And it's about a woman Amy, who's this maid for the summer at this Massachusetts, like kind of like not yacht club, but like a summer place, and they can boat and stuff. And she's this maid, and she is also trying to pass the EMT exam. She's failed twice. She has a third time to try. But while she's working this day job, she's working really hard / watching TV in the room instead of cleaning, and looking out the window and watching all of the people go back and forth. She also finds a lot of extracurricular activities by going home and trying to get her landlord's mail before he gets home so she can steam it open and see what he's up to, because he has this fiance in the Ukraine, and she's just so enthralled with this story. Like, what is even happening? Is this person real? Or are they wanting money from him? So she's not really putting her studies at the forefront, but when and she also feels a lot of loneliness because her mom has passed away and she's not been able to make a lot of friends. And so it's really just kind of creeping in, all of this, these feelings of loss and on the outskirts just are creeping into her everyday life. So she decides she's going to make a placebo program. It's self-described, but she's going to help her get her confidence back. And she's going to use this plan to pass the exam and get her life together. But then her landlord's fiance is real and comes, and so she kind of starts getting to know them, and she's starting to make friends, and things are getting a little bit better. So will her kind of grief and this delusion and self-loathing, will that equal out, and when her loneliness is going away? And how do you balance those and move on. But there's a lot of funny in this heartbreak that comes as well. Like I said, it's dark comedy, and I think that Kelly really does a good job balancing those. Sometimes you just have to laugh at the craziness, but also it is a little bit based on her own experiences being a chambermaid in the summer. So that's a fun side note to it, a backdrop. But yeah, this one's a really fun. Like I said, it's offbeat and kind of quirky, so it's a cool read. And also, I just think that cover, it just says everything. I love that cover.
Okay, I Couldn't Love You More by Esther Freud. So Esther Freud's a beloved author, and we're really excited to have her now on our list. This is a story of 3 generations of women, starting in 1960s London, and then to Ireland, and to London and back again, and kind of the secrets and tragedies that befall these women and how they deal with it and, kind of take control of their own lives. It starts really with a daughter of a barkeep who flees their country, her family, who are now in Ireland after an unsuccessful stint in London. She comes to London and starts an affair with a famous sculptor, and ends up giving birth to his child. He's twice her age. She's alone. She has no means to support the child, and she has to make some desperate decisions. And then you flash forward the next generation down in present day London, and you follow a woman who is also a mother and who is kind of floundering in an unhappy marriage, and sets out to kind of find out who her birth mother is, which leads to some shocking revelations of their own. It's a really, I think, tender portrait of women, again, finding and taking control of themselves, a portrait of love and sex and motherhood. And it's really just a beautiful, haunting novel. I'm just going to read a quick quote by Richard Curtis, who is actually the screenwriter for Love Actually. He says, "This is a powerful book. It unravels a deep tragedy in 3 miraculously entwined stories in 3 different times. It's gently told of harsh events, a mystery of separation and sorrow. It is finally resolved with truth and warmth," which I think is what so many of us need nowadays, because again, we've gone through it, but I think the ending and the revelations therein are really touching. So a really special book coming July 13th. That's I Couldn't Love You More. And I'm back with another dog book. I love dog books, and I'm happy to share this one with you as well. Also London's set, so a nice segue. This is London's #1 Dog Walking Agency by Kate Mcdougall. This is kind of for fans of animal-centric memoirs like Ages for Hawk and The Shepherd's Life. And this is both a fly-in-the-wall look at all the different types of dog owners that you would find in London. In 2006, Kate Mcdougall was working kind of a dull job at an auction house where she almost destroyed a precious piece of art, and she just couldn't handle it anymore. So she set up her own dog walking agency, about which she knew nothing. And she kind of found and discovered herself through the failings and successes therein of starting this venture. But along the way, again, she just meets all different types of folk in London for whom, enlisted her help. And so this is kind of her, her memoir, her story of coming up and kind of really growing this business to be wildly successful. But it's also just a candid look at all the various ways that we engage in our relationships with our precious doggo friends and family. So really touching, fun book, a light read, and it is coming July 6th. So that's London's #1 dog walking agency.
Okay, Island Queen by Vanessa Riley. So you might know Vanessa Riley. She writes historical romance, but this is her first historical fiction title, and it focuses on one woman from history. And I love books like this because I love telling stories of women who overcame and really just giving them credit when credit's due. So this is a sweeping historical novel about the true life of Dorothy Kerwin Thomas, who also went by Doll. She was born into slavery in the Caribbean, in Montserrat, and she bought her freedom and her sister's and her mother's freedom from her Irish planter father. And then so because she was able to do that, she really built a legacy of power. She was an entrepreneur, She had a hotel. She was a planter in some ways. So she just kind of really took over these markets of sugar plantations. And like I said, she had this luxury hotel. And so she was able to rise out of something that a lot of people weren't. And so she's surrounded by this colonialism, and she gets out of it by working this system. I think probably as a woman, you're a little, I think there's a lot of stories out there of that, like you're not really paid much attention to, and what do we do when we're not paid much attention to, you know? She works this system. And so it also goes from the port cities of the West Indies where she is, but also goes all the way to like London's elite drawing rooms. You know, it's really a world ocean crossing book. And I think she does a really good job of showing her life in these pages. And like I said, she rose against all odds. And there's a lot of 18th century morality and oppression for women of color specifically. And she showed them. So I can't wait for everyone to learn more about this incredible woman. And I'm thankful to Vanessa Riley for writing about her.
Okay, this is one of my favorite books of the season, and I'm really excited to share it with you all. It's After Parties by Anthony Veyas. So Anthony was a rising star in the literary world when he unexpectedly passed away towards the end of 2020. It's an honor to have this short story collection on the list. It's so intimate and beautifully written. It's something you'll just want to curl up with and never let go. It's a collection of short stories that focus specifically on the Cambodian American experience, of the gay experience. Generally set, this is a great California book. It's primarily set there. And it's just a collection of stories, like snapshots of life of various Cambodian American people who, you know, inherit the weight of their own country, of the Khmer Rouge genocide, you know, and all the complexities therein of being an immigrant, of being gay, of various other things. Some of the highlights for me, there's a great story about a single mother and her two teenage daughters who run a 24-hour donut shop. And every night, late, a guy strolls in, orders a single donut, and just stares out, you know, into the abyss. They're on the beach, and he never eats a donut, and then he just leaves. And these three women kind of become obsessed with who he is, what he's about, and it kind of all comes to a very propulsive end. But there's so much. There's one about a high school badminton coach, and he's kind of like a failing grocery store owner who strikes up a rivalry with one of the kids, the high school kids on the badminton team. And it's all kind of told through the teammates and the people observing this really strange, inappropriate, competitive relationship. It's funny and it's sad, and it's just so beautifully written. George Saunders has given it a great quote, and I think that's a great comparison for this book, would be George Saunders. There's just a lot here. It's a very special book, and it's an important publication for us. So this is coming August 3rd. That's After Parties by Anthony Veyas.
Okay, Palm Beach by Mary Adkins. So we love Mary Adkins here at LLF. This is her third book, her third novel, and it's a little different for her, but I think it's really great for book club. So if you're looking for a good book club read, this is perfect. It's about a couple named Mickey and Rebecca, and they moved to Palm Beach. They used to live in New York City. They just had a baby, so a newborn baby. And Rebecca's a financial journalist, and Mickey is kind of a struggling actor. He does a lot of catering on the side to pay the bills in between. And they're just kind of over struggling, and they have this new baby. They just want to get out of their tiny apartment. So they move to Palm Beach when Mickey gets an offer to work for this like multi-millionaire. He's got so much money, and he quickly learns that like this is a totally different life. These people have more money than they could ever do anything with, and those consequences for them are interesting throughout this book when things come up. But then as Rebecca is in the same town, she is writing about, she's a financial journalist, so she's writing a lot about debt inequity or financial inequity around the world. And so obviously she's intrigued by them. She thinks that in certain ways, she kind of thinks she may be better than them. And I'm sure the other couple that he works for feel the same in other ways. But Rebecca gets to know the wife of this couple, this multimillionaire couple, and the wife wants to hire Rebecca to write a memoir for her. So now she has to kind of figure out where she ethically stands here. Like, is she going to ghostwrite? Is she going to call out any inequities? Like, how does that work? And so now she's in the house every day, and her husband's in the house every day. They're both working. And at some points, her husband is also like waiting on her too, because he's just kind of serving the house. So that brings up a lot of interesting dynamics. But as certain things happen, there's something that happens with their child, and they have to bring up these moral dilemmas when it comes down to money. Like how far are they willing to put their morals aside if they can get the money to fix things in their life? And like I said, it just brings up so many questions about what you would do in that situation, that I think book clubs are going to really love it. And Mary does a great job. A lot of all of her books deal a lot with bordering the darker and the heavier topics with the kind of darker humor and lighthearted. So she also writes a lot about privilege and different inequalities, especially throughout money. So this is her sweet spot, and it's just a wonderful read. It's fast paced, but I hope you take it to your book club, because you'll want to talk about it with somebody. Next is Sisters in Arms by Kaya Alderson. So this one, super excited. We have a lot of World War II historical fiction books, but this one is very different, and it's telling stories that are not always known or told. And so I'm really hoping that this opens up a gate for a lot of new stories of people that need to be told and did a lot to make a difference. So this is centering on two women, Grace and Eliza, and they're from very different backgrounds. And they both joined the Army, specifically the Women's Army Auxiliary Corps, the WAC. And they are both starting at the same level there. So they come in with a little bit of differences, but now they're really thrust into this new thing. They're not only the first class of female officers in the Army, but they're also the first Black women allowed to serve in World War II. And so they make up the 6,888th Central Postal Battalion, Directory Battalion, or the 6,888 is what they're called. And they go over to overseas to deliver mail to people who can't get it. And they go through a lot. They go through a lot of bureaucracy. People determined to make them fail because some people don't want them in the Army at all. And they kind of have to go against all of that to prove that they're meant to be there. But like I said, they're doing very important jobs, and a lot through history has been forgotten. But what's really cool about this book is that Kaya did a lot of research and went to a lot of libraries. She went to a lot of museums. She got to, see the uniforms up close. She got to see dining hall menus from them. She got to see what their training regimen looked like. And so she really immersed herself in it, that I think she did it. And I think she did a great job just showing all around how great these women's service was, and got you like you felt like you were there. So very excited about this one.
Okay, two more books that we're going to talk about. The second to last is Miss Butterworth and the Mad Baron by Julia Quinn and Violet Charles. So I'd imagine many of you have watched the Bridgerton series on Netflix based on Julia Quinn's multi-million-selling romance series. And I love Julia Quinn. She was the first romance novelist that I read because of Miss Bridgerton. So smart, and the historical details are always so immersive. And there's like the dialogue, the romance. She's a star of the genre. So the setup for this book is this series, Miss Butterworth and the Mad Baron, is kind of like hinted at throughout many of the books that Julia Quinn has written, but the story's never been fully told. This is something a character might be reading and it's just kind of mentioned in passing, or you might just get a sliver of the story. But now it's brought to full color life. And just a note that Violet Charles is actually Julia Quinn's sister and a very talented artist. So she's in charge of the illustration in this book. So this is this kind of madcap romantic adventure that follows Miss Priscilla Butterworth, who basically survives a series of very outlandish trials and ultimately, despite all odds, finds herself face to face with the Mad Baron herself and potentially her first and last chance at love. But really beautiful illustrations. Again, it's madcap, it's ridiculous, but it's so fun. And again, I think people are just so hungry for anything Bridgerton related, and this is a really kind of extra layer to the world that we're really excited to share. So it's coming in August 17th. I'm sure the demand will be high for this. We're really excited. And then the last book, and a very important book that we'll be presenting today, is The Sisters of Auschwitz by Roxanne van Iperen. And this is already a bestseller in the Netherlands, where Roxanne is based and in which the story is based. And it's all centered around two incredible sisters, Jani and Lien Brilleslijper, who in the winter of 1943, while resistance to the Nazis is growing, these two sisters are basically take it upon themselves to set up this clandestine safe house in the woods, which they called the High Nest, which is fascinating because the whole impetus behind discovering this story for Roxanne is that she moved into the High Nest without actually knowing what it was formerly. She found a bunch of trapdoors and she began to ask questions about the history of it. And she uncovered the history of these two incredible sisters who set up this safe house. It's in the woods outside of Amsterdam, and it's a refuge for Jewish, Jewish people, Jewish citizens, as well as artists, people condemned by Hitler's Germany. And what's really fascinating about this is the High Nest was, of course, a safe house, a hiding place, but it was also a place of celebration. They would put on performances. Again, there were musicians, there were artists. It was a place of joy in the midst of a lot of pain. And it's a really fascinating look at these two very different sisters, their bravery, their story, which unfortunately does end up with them being discovered. That's not a spoiler, that's part of their story. And it does follow them through their own journey to Auschwitz, alongside actually Anne Frank and her family, which is really fascinating. And it's their story from beginning to end. It's an homage to two women whose stories hadn't previously been told. And it's really fascinating stuff. Just, again, it's already a bestseller in the Netherlands. It's a big book for us. And we're really excited to share it. So this is coming August 31st. And I'm sure, again, it'll be eagerly anticipated, a very important story to be told. So it's The Sisters of Auschwitz by Roxanne van Iperen. And with that, that's all of our books. So we thank you again. We thank Sacramento for hosting us. We're thrilled to share all this with you. If you have any questions about these books or others, there's our contact info. And again, it was wonderful sharing this hour with you all.
Thank you so much, Chris and Lenny. That was just so exciting. There are so many books that I am looking forward to reading this summer, but most especially The Hidden Palace. I seriously, I cannot overstate my love for The Golem and the Genie. I love that book so much.
There's a real magic to it. It's hard to fully put it into words. Characters, place, whatever it is, it's magical. Yeah.
That's often what I tell people. I also tell them that it's everything you could possibly want in a book. It's just such a satisfying read. So that's the one I'm down for, and After Parties, because that one looks so really exciting. So thank you, everyone. Thank you to our presenters, and thank you to everyone who attended today. Most of these books are already on the library catalog, so if you're interested, and most of the others will be on there soon. So you can also pre-order them at independent bookstores or pick them up there. And again, if you missed any of the titles today, don't worry. All attendees are going to receive a link to a copy of the slides from today's presentation. And remember, lucky randomly selected attendees will win prize packages from Harper Collins today, and I will notify the winners via email after our show today. Please join us again next week, Wednesday, June 16th at noon, for a presentation by Simon & Schuster. For information about that event and other summer events, or to sign up for summer reading, please be sure to visit our website at saclibrary.org. Until then, happy reading, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.